Okay, I'd like to call the February meeting of the Metro North Committee to order. I need a motion to accept the minutes as submitted. Can I get a second? All in favor? Anyone contrary? Carried. Okay, I think the work plan is in your books. I don't think there's any changes to the work plan. Status of operations.
Before we do, just one thing, Jim, I just wanted to introduce the board members, our new Director of Personnel, Adrian Cortez. Adrian, could you stand up, please? Okay. Adrian comes to us from Long Island Railroad and as well as a long career in the private sector. Replaced Shirley Joshua. Shirley has moved over to the Business Service Center, and so she'll be a key member of our team going forward. Just wanted everyone to know Adrian.
Okay, status of operations.
Good morning, all. As usual, I'll summarize what is on page 14 of your handbook. In January, we operated at 96.5%, below our target of 97.6%. All aspects of the service, the AM peak, the PM peak, the off-peak, and the off-peak weekend, all were below target by 1 or 2 points. I'll point out, however, that in January of 2008, when we ran 98.6, we had 1 snow day, and in January of 2009, we had 9 snow days. So I would guess there's a direct correlation. Of the 31 days in January, we operated below 95% 7 times, and one of those days was below 90%. There were 600 late trains of the 17,396 trains scheduled. 172 trains were 15 minutes late, and 73 of those trains were more than 30 minutes late. 99.5% of our trips were completed, and 94.3% of our trains operated with a full consist. The status of West of Hudson is found on page 19 of your handbook. It operated at 92.6, below its goal of 96.2. There were 124 late trains of the 1,684 trains. The Port Jervis was at 94.5, below target. The Pascack Valley was at 91.4, below its target. Again, the snow days affected them the same way as us. 98.8% of the trips were completed. 52 trains were 15 minutes late, and 29 of those trains were more than 30 minutes late. The reconciled mean distance between failure for December is on page 22 of your handout. 71,000 miles in December against a target of 100,000. Let me briefly summarize where we were. While we don't like January, February is at 97.4. Last week we operated at 98.3 for the entire week, and Saturday was our first 100% day since the middle of August. Any other questions on operations?
Well, that mean distance between fires is pretty good.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
You have the annual mean distance between failure report on page 24 of your handout. In general, it's good news. The only 2 things of concern I'll point out to you and answer any of your questions are the M6 continue, where M6s have always been below their targets, and the Genesis and Bombardier are not where we want them. We're in the middle of an overhaul program, as most of you realize, and once that's complete, I expect their NDVF to pick back up to where it belongs. Questions?
Any questions for George?
George, on page 17, top of the page, trains brushed against each other once in the David line.
17.
Yeah, the top of the page, the first explanation for an incident that happened. 2 trains brushed against each other.
I don't remember that one.
No, I remember that.
Yep.
That was,
Wasn't
an initial report was an error. What happened was they thought that had happened.
That's it.
But then a coffin cover fell off of one train, and it bounced and hit another train, and so there was no brushing at all.
Okay. Thank you.
Good memory.
Not great.
No, we call the electric lockers underneath are called coffins for whatever reason. They look like them. They're about the same size, and they have covers which are steel doors.
And nobody was in it.
No. However, the
Not
mechanic who didn't properly latch the cover
better let it go.
was dealt with
Okay.
appropriately.
Okay, any more questions for George? Kim?
Good morning. Today I'll be covering preliminary December 2008 results against the final estimates which were approved by the board in December 2008. At a later time, the final December results will be presented in the next couple of months. Based on these preliminary results, total revenues were $2 million or 0.4% unfavorable to the final estimate. Of this, $4.6 million related to year-to-date farebox revenues due to a decline in the ridership growth that we experienced in the first half of the year, or the most early part of the year. What we saw was a decline in ridership and non-commutation in the last 2 months. However, in spite of this, Metro North did end up with 2008 East of Hudson ridership as the highest in its history, with carrying 81.5 million riders as part of the 25th year anniversary. Partially offsetting this negative variance is positive $2.6 million in year-to-date other operating revenues, primarily due to GCC retail revenues. Total expenses before depreciation, GASB, and other adjustments was $12 million favorable to budget, to the final forecast. However, these results are fairly preliminary and will not be covered until the final results are available. The results that are not subject to change are the cash surplus and deficit. In this regard, we were favorable to the final estimate by $14.6 million. 7.3 was related to favorable cash receipts, 4.1 million from higher capital activity and reimbursements, 5.1 due to higher other operating revenues, partially offset by 2 million negative in farebox revenue. On the expenditure side, there was a favorable of 7 million, and primarily that all resulted from variances in pension between what was projected and what was the actual results. So that really concludes that labor was, in a net effect, right in line with the estimate, and non-labor was right in line with the estimate. And that concludes the report. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Kim? Thank you, Kim. Monthly ridership.
Good morning. I'll give you a few highlights. The ridership report's in your book starting on page 46. December ridership east of Hudson, our first decline. We had been talking in the last few months about how the rate of growth had been slowing. We had an absolute decline of 0.9% in December of 2008 versus the previous year. As Kim mentioned, our total east of Hudson ridership was 81.5 million, the highest in our history, and the first time we broke 80 million east of Hudson. Earlier in the year, as I'd mentioned previously, I'll recap, we had seen growth of about 5% January through August versus 2007. September and October, it started to slow down to 3.1% in September, 2.7% in October. Growth in November was just 1% above previous year, and as I mentioned, in December we were down 0.9%. That growth, that trend was basically reflected on all three lines. All three lines showed declines between a fraction of a percent and slightly over 1%. Commutation ridership in December was flat, right around 0, and non-commutation ridership, predominantly the discretionary trips, declined 2% in December versus the previous year. Overall, for the year, annual commutation ridership was up 3%, non-com ridership was up 5%. West of Hudson, we also saw a slight decline. December ridership was 0.4% below the previous year. Again, the first time we'd seen a decline in 2008. Total annual rides west of Hudson was 2.1 million, another threshold broken. We'd never seen 2 million rides west of Hudson before. For the year, we were up 9.4%. We saw by line, we saw a 2% decline on Port Jervis line in December, and we saw a 4% growth on the Pascagoula Valley, but that 4% growth in December compares to 24% we had been seeing earlier in the year as an average growth, so it's a substantial slowing down of the trends. With regard to our three managed connecting services, the Hudson Rail Link saw a 5% decline in December, which is consistent with what we saw in the West Bronx. We were seeing 4 to 5% on our West Bronx ridership on Metro North. For the year, Hudson Rail Link was up 4%. Hampshire-Ossining Ferry, we saw a slight increase, 1% in December. It was up 6% for the year. Newburgh-Beacon Ferry continued to grow significantly in December of '08, up 20% versus a year ago. And annually, we were up 29% for the year on Newburgh-Beacon Ferry. Total ridership for all three, East of Hudson, West of Hudson Rail, and connecting services for the year was 84.22 million. So another record high for annual ridership. Any questions?
Bob, could you give just the status of the operations of the two ferries?
Haverstraw-Ossining returned to service. As of late last night, the captain for the Newburgh-Beacon Ferry was out. Still a lot of ice, Danny, on the Beacon side. On the Beacon side, they've been having temperatures in the teens overnight up there. Still cold up there the next couple days. We'll be visiting this day by day. There was some hope we might get back into service tomorrow, but they'll be looking at that this morning, correct? Danny O'Connell.
Obviously, we started when it's safe to run the boat again and when we can make the reasonable travel time.
Right.
I just want to add what Bob is speaking of on the ridership, particularly in December, highlights how hard it will be to maintain our ridership levels in face of the economic circumstance, and that these are very, very strong headwinds that it will affect all our different markets. And it's since we have such a high market share, particularly in the rush hour, upwards of 90%, if the numbers of people working in Manhattan go down, it'll be very hard for us to keep our ridership level even, because we will not be able to increase that level of market share. So we'll be watching that throughout the year, but I mean, these are some of the trends I think that we obviously are concerned about.
Having said that, Howard, I think it sort of begs the question of whether, given current circumstances, you remain confident about the projection for the year, whether what you're seeing now is sort of out of pattern with what you would have expected when you were putting together conservative projections last year.
Right. When we put together our projections was months ago, and clearly we didn't see anything like the economic circumstance we're now facing. So we were very conservative. My memory is it was under 1% increase we projected.
I think, yeah, it's something around 1% for the year.
Right.
Correct?
So, which was, and at the time we were doing it, we were looking at increases of 4 to 5%. So we were very conservative when we put that together. But given what's happened since then, I mean, we have a concern. Will we be able to make that in the face of this economic circumstance?
Would it be worthwhile to revisit that, given what we have now?
We do
Given
it,
that it's so old.
Yeah, we do it as part of our ongoing budget process. Kim, do you want to speak to what the timing is on that?
Starting in the next couple of months, more actively in April and May, to prepare for the July financial plan, we will be revisiting our ridership projections. And with that in mind, we'll be paying very close attention to the first quarter, because those results will be available at that time. So we'll factor what trends we see in the first quarter.
Jim, if you indulge me on one other thing, on the ferry report that you just talked about, Bob. What is either the revenue or, I guess primarily the revenue impact of a missed day of ferry ridership? Given that you're then running bus service to support that, is it a significant negative I think since we talk about it, we ought to have sort of the financial impact of those.
On-
Well, the cost of the operation goes down because we no longer pay for the ferry, but we only pay for the bus operation. So the actual financials improve for those 2 weeks that we're running buses because of
I'll say on the revenue side, Danny, the vast majority of people are on monthly rail tickets and unit tickets with Metro North. So for on a day-by-day basis, unless it were to drag on into the next month, there's no perceptible revenue impact. And as Danny mentions, our operating costs decline because the bus is much less expensive than the boats.
So we pray for ice.
No. No, because the reason they're there is
Right.
because the service is good.
That's the key thing. If we were just busing them over a period of time, we would not provide a much lower level of service, and we'd have much fewer people on the ferries or the buses.
We don't lose ridership.
I want to say something in favor of ferries here. The ferries improve our ridership on the other side of the river because people west of Hudson enjoy taking the ferry. It's a pleasant way to get to work. So let's hear it for ferries.
Yes, thank you.
Free park.
Right.
So what we're saying is it doesn't affect the ridership because those riderships are monthly tickets or
Right.
whatever.
For short term. Yes, short term.
Okay. Okay, any more questions? Capital.
Thank you. Good morning. The capital program highlights are on page 56 of your report, and I have a few updates. In station work, the Hudson Line Station Improvement Phase 2, which is Phillips Manor, Scarborough, and Ossining. At Ossining, we have the Track 2-4 bench set, and we're this week beginning to set the concrete plank. Yankee Stadium, at the station itself, the platform stairs are done. They're waiting windows. They're framed in. The mezzanine roof is almost complete, and the roof going over to the overpass is almost complete. The overpass itself is up, and we're forming out and putting in rebar for the floor on the overpass, and we expect that to be accessible for opening day on April 3rd, and the beneficial use of the entire station the end of May of this year. Shops and yards, Croton Harmon shop, we're enclosed and inside doing winter work and the painting at the locomotive coach shop is 25% complete. The locomotive shop is about 75% complete on the painting and interior work, and we're starting to work on some of the building equipment. The drop table installation is almost complete. That job is approaching the 75% level. The value engineering study for that work has also been completed, and we're now working on incorporating the recommendations from the value engineering into the construction documents. And we received bids for the catenary repair and painting for the catenary structures in the New York portion of the New Haven line. Excuse me. Any questions? I'd be glad to answer them.
Any questions for Ron?
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Monthly safety report.
Good morning.
Morning.
The results in the book, which begin on page 59, are results through December. Last month, if you recall, we highlighted some of the accomplishments in 2008, so I'm going to quickly recap these results for you and also point out that this month's book contains our annual report on our 2008 results, and I'd be glad to answer any questions on that also. On the employee injury side, our total employee injuries were down from 232 in 2007 to 175 in 2008, which is an all-time low for us. That's a year-over-year change of 25%. Our lost time and restricted duty injuries adjusted for work hours were down from 2.1 per 200,000 hours worked to 1.2. A drop of 43%, again, another all-time low for us. And the FRA reportable employee injuries, again, adjusted for work hours, were down from 3.0 to 2.0, a 33% decrease. On the customer side, those numbers are on page 60, begin on page 60. There were 13 less customer injuries in 2008 than there were in 2007, a 5% decrease. Adjusted for ridership, the injuries per million rides were down from 3.4 to 3.1, 9% decrease. And the FRA reportable injuries per million rides were down from 0.7 to 0.2, although that's a very lagging number, and that will probably be revised going forward as we reclassify some of those injuries as additional information comes in. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Mark, could you just tell the committee a minute about Safety Week, what we did, what you did?
Well, yes. This year, unfortunately, we have gotten off to a very difficult start. Last January was just an extraordinary month. We had one of our best months ever, especially for a winter month. Unfortunately, this January we had one of our worst months in about 4 years. This included, as we spoke about at a previous meeting, a fatal injury to one of our signal maintainers on January 9th. So given our experience in January, I think we reacted very aggressively to that with a number of initiatives. And then last week we decided that we would do a company-wide kind of stand-down for safety. So we organized what we called Safety Week. We basically provided direction to the corporate leadership to plan and organize special safety initiatives in all of their departments across the company last week. And we just basically asked everyone to take a time out and get refocused on safety. So many of the departments planned a lot of personal contact with their employees, special safety meetings, meetings with their departmental leadership to make sure they were pushing the message down. So particular emphasis in the operating division and also in capital as far as our contractor safety programs are concerned. So, you know, again, our assessment of that was pretty favorable. We saw a lot of activity out there, and I think we were largely successful in getting the message, of course. Probably the most important indicator is that we have not had an employee injury since last Tuesday, which is very good news for us because during January we were getting them almost at the rate of one a day. So we're much more back on track with kind of the record-setting pace that we were on in prior months, and hopefully we'll maintain that trend. So.
Okay. Mark, does that success indicate perhaps a need or a desire to maybe stoke up the safety program with a big reminder such as that on some planned basis, maybe once every year or two, so that basically repetition gets people refocused, which, you know, we're all prone to kind of be a little less lax, a little more lax as time goes on.
I think the point is very well taken, and we actually do that on several levels on a routine basis. So just embedded in our program are a lot of opportunities for us to go into a district, for example, and meet with the district leadership, review their results, and so typically we would react if we see something getting out of line at a local level, and we react much more quickly to that. So George and the senior operating staff meet with each district team quarterly with a particular focus on safety, look at their results in that quarter, and basically ensure that there isn't any kind of complacency or laxity going on. And then on a corporate level, we basically have messages out there in just about every medium that we have on a routine basis. This was kind of an extraordinary, not an extraordinary effort in a sense. It was really, January was an extraordinary event for us, just because it was so out of line with all of our recent experience in the last year or two. And I think we've reacted appropriately. I think one of the hallmarks of our program has been consistency and a systematic approach, as opposed to what many years ago had been just a very reactive approach. And I don't think one of the things we don't want to do is get back into you know, simply being reactive when things are going poorly. So we do lots and lots of reinforcement on an ongoing basis.
I think it should be noted, too, on page 62 and 64 of your annual report, it seems like we've done very well in all the categories in '08, and that's to be commended.
Thank you.
Okay. MTA, police report.
Good morning. On page 66, you'll see the criminal statistics, recording Part 1, reportable offenses for January 2009, and then again January to January 2009 versus 2008. As you can see, crime was flat, 10 total major felonies for both 2008, 2009 with no change. We did show a decrease in robberies and grand larcenies, which is good, but we showed some increases in felony assaults on the other end to keep things flat. But, so to speak, from a crime standpoint, a pretty good January for the MTA police. If there are any questions, I'll attempt to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay, information items.
Kim?
Okay, included in your book on page 68 is the information item for the adopted budget financial plan for 2009 through 2012. This plan was already adopted by the board in December 2008 and is actually being represented today as the February plan just to incorporate the gap closing items into Metro North's budget. Those items, as you recall, were the PEGs, the other administrative reductions, additional actions for budget balance, and the MTA fare increase. It also reflects technical adjustments such as incorporating revisions to pension and fuel cost. So nothing that you haven't already approved and just being formally incorporated into our budget.
Okay, any questions? Strategic investments.
Yeah, this is the annual report. We have it in the book for you, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Jim?
Thank you, Jim. I think it's an excellent report. It really just is soup to nuts of what's going on in this organization from an investment perspective. And I thank the staff for the effort that goes into it. On page 96, there is a statement under the purchase of the M8 cars that we're considering on the next to the last bullet, acquiring an alternate car to the M8 married pair. I wonder if you could just, I have two questions. That's the first.
Okay,
Whether you could
yeah,
respond
first,
to that.
let me thank you on behalf of the staff. This is a major effort. It's centered in Bob McClagger's department, but it involves a number of people throughout the railroad. So thank you for that in terms of the report itself. What that is, Jim, we are looking at in conversations with Connecticut, looking at the possibility of buying single cars in lieu of married pair cars as part of our remainder of our option or any future purchase. As you know, we're buying 300 married pairs are being constructed as we speak. So that's what we're looking at. There are pros and cons. We're looking at that as a strategic choice right now, and we're in the middle of that evaluation with Connecticut.
What would it have been driving us to even ask the question of whether we should or shouldn't?
Yeah, the issue would be similar. As you know, we have triplets on the New Haven line, which allows us to operate odd consist trains to better match the capacity with the ridership. There, for a variety of reasons, the triplet concept has not been that successful with the cars we have. So we're looking at an alternative way of doing that. That's the primary reason. That leads to potentially significant savings. You need less cars, so we're looking at that savings. There's some operating issues associated with it that go the other direction. So that's what we're looking at right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense, and I applaud that. The second, just a passing question about the on page 108. Advertising new products. and the Titan licensing in Grand Central. Do you have an update on the Titan refurbishing of the track entrances in Grand
I'm
Central?
going to ask, Randy, can you speak to that?
Thanks, Randy. I think it's just from my own perspective, I think it's a net upgrade to the look of the station as you come in or as you leave, and to the extent that you can get it paid for and actually get revenue out of it. I mean, it's a real win-win. I think it's going to be a plus for the advertisers, who will really be catching, all of our commuters and perhaps, generating sales out of that effort. So I'm glad that a 60-day window is what you're looking at to try to bring that to a conclusion.
Yeah, we agree with you. It would definitely be win-win. It's tough in this economy now that it's really affecting their ability to bring the advertisers on board.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, easements.
Okay, this is, I think, going to be for real estate, and basically this is one of the last, if not the last, real estate action we need to progress the Cortland parking and station improvement project. And so it's for information here. It will be for action at the real estate committee. If I don't know, Randy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
If I remember correctly, this had a lot of moving parts. So, we're getting to the point where it's coming to fruition.
It had many moving parts. It's been a real effort between Randy, his staff, Rocco, David Bosch, I see in the back, real estate staff. This has been going on also with the environmental group under Rich Gans. It's been ongoing for years to bring all the pieces together. We're basically there. I think we're bidding the project. When, Ron?
Design's at about the 95% level now, so next month.
Good. Any other questions? Okay, we have 9 procurements totaling $1,918,000. I'll let you a motion, and then we can discuss.
Motion.
Second?
Okay.
Second, okay.
Let me just highlight a couple of them. There's some important ones in here. 3 of them we're asking approval to use the RFP process. One is, the first one is to note is the design build services for Harmon Shop Phase 4 for the support shop building. This is the first piece that has to be done to allow us to construct the support shop. Right now we're awaiting funding on this. This not be funded, but we can get going in anticipation of future funding. The second one is also an important one, is use the RFP to hire a firm to scrap the M2 cars. This will be a joint contract with Connecticut. This is an important one. As the M8s start to come on board, that we will aggressively retire the M2s when they're ready to be retired and take them off the property. Storage is always a problem. We don't have much space for these cars, so it's important this moves expeditiously. We also have, I want to highlight, we have 3 miscellaneous service contracts. One is to maintain the car wash, one is for high rail tie and unloading, and one is the guaranteed ride home program. And also, we have one modification, which is for Baker Engineering, which is to bring the design of the New Haven Line stations, the remaining 6 of them, up to from 30 to 100%. You may recall we previously approved doing that for 2 of them, and again, in anticipation of future funding, we want to be ready to have the projects fully designed. Plus, using Baker is the most efficient way of proceeding, since they did the 30% and they're doing the other 2 stations. So those are the contracts. Plus, we have two ratifications, which are to look at some of the different matters revolving rail wheel interface, and those are ratifications we'll be asking for approval.
All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, March the 23rd at 8:30 a.m. For a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Carried.
Thank you.